The Canola School on RealAgriculture.com is brought to you by BASF Canada and Invigor Hybrid Canola.
Hi, I'm Amber Bell and this is Real Agriculture. I am here today with Nicole Fox from BASF. And we're going to be talking about flea beetles and what is going on the past couple of years with them and some ways to scout. So, Nicole, why don't you tell us what happened in 2023 with flea beetles and what we were looking at back then?
So taking it back to 2023, I'm sure everyone remembers a very, very hot May. I think it was 30 degrees on May 1st. It was extremely dry, all the right conditions to have flea beetles come out strong. And surprisingly, they didn't. There was lower application rates recorded last year. Maybe part of that was the uptake in the upgraded seed treatment options growers are selecting, so maybe that had a benefit. But we did see a lower pressure last year, even though it was the ideal environment for that pest.
Okay, and then what are we looking at coming into 2024 now?
Yeah, so coming into 2024, we really want to remind every grower that even though you had potentially a good year last year, it's really to be mindful of these pests because they really do come in strong most seasons. And we had a very mild winter and not a lot of snowfall, so likely there was a pretty high survival rate from those flea beetles on the overwintering side. So once things start heating up this spring, and the canola starts emerging or even seeding in the areas that are delayed, they're going to come in strong, I bet.
Yeah, and they really like those warm temperatures.
The warm, dry temperatures, and yes, will come in and completely eat up your plants.
So with the flea beetles being temperature sensitive, is there any benefit to delaying seeding for flea beetles and to try and negate some of the damage they're going to do?
Yeah, it's a great question, and honestly a lot of producers have their own plans that they really like to follow. A couple key things to keep in mind are first that if you are seeing canola into the cooler weathers, they are going to stay in that susceptible stage, which is cotyledon up to the 4-leaf stage, a little bit longer, which means flea beetles are going to be attacking them during that susceptible stage. We really encourage growers to be seeding when there is a warm, moist seed bed. That way you have optimal plant stand coming up and that it moves through those susceptible stages much faster. So really, that's what we recommend. And again, every producer has their own things that they like to follow. So really follow what you do typically on your farm and follow it up with monitoring regularly and then action if needed if that pest is out of control.
So we all know monitoring is very important when it comes to any types of pests like these. How would you go out to scout if you're scouting specifically for flea beetles?
Yes, great. First thing we really need to note is that what we're looking for. So there's two key species that we're looking for. That is the crucifer flea beetle, so they have that kind of bluish black body, and the striped flea beetle, so the same body type but with kind of two yellow waves on the back. So we're looking for those two black beetles out in the field, and we want to see them actively feeding. So once we see that and we know some things about their life cycle, like their peak emergence is around the 14 to 15 degrees. So around that timing is when you're really going to start seeing them come out, be actively feeding during those sunny hot days like today. So what you want to do is you want to start from the perimeter of your field edge and start scouting your plants there. Mainly because the flea beetles like to overwinter in the grassland headlands or along tree edges, in your neighboring fields, canola stubble, anything like that. So that's why they come from the outside and work their way in. Now how we're going to assess these plants for damage is we're going to look at the full plant. So that's looking at cotyledons and all the true leaf stages that are out. And we're looking for a total leaf area loss of 25% to warrant a need for a foliar application. And the symptomology that we're looking for there is that shot hole feeding that goes right through the cotyledons and first leaf. And that is what we're looking for in terms of flea beetles.
Okay, and then so to kind of switch gears a little bit here, some regions last year had a lot of problems with cutworms. And so what are some things that you'd have to look out for with cutworms? Is it the same type of management that would help out, or?
Yeah, no, great question again. So cutworms are a different pest in themselves, but ideally they come out around the same time flea beetles do. So when you're already scouting for flea beetles, also keep an eye open for cutworms. So last year there was in central Alberta a pretty good outbreak that did warrant some foliar applications, and sporadic throughout the other prairie provinces. So in central Alberta, it was the redback cutworm that was the problem last year. So it has kind of a brassy colored body with these two dull red stripes on the back. And when you are looking for if this is your pest, it's good to note that this pest does come above ground to feed on plants. So you're looking for kind of notches gone on the edges of your leaves. And if you do see a worm of some sort and you're curious if that is a cutworm, characteristic to all the cutworms is if you disturb them, pick them up, poke at them, they'll curl up into a tight C, and that's a sure sign that that is a cutworm. And then as we move into Saskatchewan, Manitoba, they had the redback, but also the pale western cutworm. So this cutworm at younger larval stage is pretty much colorless. They looked very interesting. As they grow up and go through their larval stages, they get to a kind of grayish green color, and again will curl up into a tight C. This pest is a little bit trickier because it feeds predominantly below ground. So when you're entering that field looking for cutworm damage, you're looking for completely toppled over plants because they've taken it off right at that soil level. You're looking for any type of wilting occurring, bare patches in the field, and again, even some of that notches gone on the top. So an important thing for cutworms too is they love the warm soil as well, but during the day they actually go underground and they don't actively feed. They come out kind of at the dusk time to feed. So if you see those signs in the field, make sure you dig up some of those plants and actually look in the soil for evidence of cutworms. And if you do need to manage that pest, you're going to want to come in with a foliar insecticide when they're actively feeding, so again at that dusk timing. And the threshold recommended for cutworms is 4 to 6 larvae per meter squared.
Okay, and so for scouting for cutworms, would it be best then to go out in the evening, or would you be able to just judge based on what the plant looks like?
You can do a bit of both. So when you're out already scouting for flea beetles, again, you can look for those above ground symptomologies. They don't go too deep in the soil during the day. So again, if you dig it up and kind of, mix the soil through your hands, you're likely to find them if they are the culprit. But again, if you're coming out in the evening and you want to confirm that, you likely will see them come up above ground, especially that redback cutworm, and you'll see them out there moving. And with the foliar insecticides, it is a contact insecticide, right? So you want to be spraying when they're out and actively feeding. That's why the dusk timing.
Okay, and that makes sense. Is it typical to find cutworms and flea beetles in the same field?
It is surprisingly common to have both pests in the same field, and it can be a struggle to manage both because similar, contact insecticides, you want to be spraying for flea beetles during the day when they're actively feeding out those sunny days, low winds, and then cutworms are going to come out in the evening to spray, so it might warrant 2 different timings.
Okay. And do you have any tips, tricks, encouragements for producers going into this season?
Honestly, my biggest tip is to monitor regularly. If you catch it early, you can manage it early and you'd get minimal yield loss from these pests. But also a really good thing to note too is there's options out there to control the pest, and your canola plants actually are very elastic and can take a lot more defoliation loss than you would expect before yield is sacrificed.
Okay, well that's great. Thank you so much for joining us today, Nicole. And that was Nicole Fox on Real Agriculture.